I am good. Good to see you. Sorry to wake you up early.
Not at all,
Media people sleep till late. I know that.
but good for discipline to get up early once in a while. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
hi, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Ambassador Chakravorty, and all our friends who've joined us on this call. A very good morning to you, and it's going to be very interesting to be interacting with all of you over the next some time. And Ambassador and I discussed that it would be very nice if this conversation is as interactive as possible. I will, of course, be sharing a few thoughts, but I would really like to do is listen and maybe help you with some specific practical, even questions that you may have when you find yourself in actual situations. We're here today to talk about the art of the interview. Ambassador Chakravarti, I'll wait for you if to set the
Yeah, yeah.
template and
So,
yeah,
yeah, we will just start with introductions. We'll give you a little bit of a
yes,
background, and
okay.
and then so I think Dafa Pa Dafa, you will start.
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Sandeep and Mr. Sachin, also Miss Barkha for joining this webinar. So, how about we start this, Pak Sachin?
Okay, thank you, Dafa. Hi, Barkha. Good morning. I'm Sachin Gopalan.
Hi, Sachin.
I work with the embassy and ambassador to run the India News Desk, and we have a team here.
Very
And
nice to meet you, sir. Yeah.
very nice to meet you as well. And I have been working on this how we put together India News Desk to be able to reach out to the Indonesian media. So I'll give you
Hmm.
a little bit of a background of what we do.
Sure.
So we have about 600 newsrooms in Indonesia across all the various provinces and cities and towns. And community media has become very strong now compared to having one national media. And
Sure.
a lot of people depend on the local community portal or digital portal for the news that's happening around them. So we started this about a year ago, mainly because we noticed that there was not much information about India in many of these publications, or if there was, they tend to focus on the wrong things
Hmm.
because of not having access to all the things that are happening in India. So we
Hmm.
thought that our job would be to facilitate providing them good content about India, what's going on in India, what's the relevance for that to Indonesia, and all in local language. So our team does that. We work with the journalists, we work with several of the chief editors as well. And then we put together this Voices of Tomorrow program, which is aimed to be a content creation exercise right now. Like we record this session and we have a live audience of 30, 40 to 50 people, sometimes up to 100. It depends on who's got assignment, because they're all working, the journalists are working. But the outreach is after this as well, because then we have our people going and approaching all the registered people. We have more than 200 registered, so
Hmm.
they then can catch up with the episode during the rest of the week. So that is the essential cycle. So we have about 200 journalists who go through the program, but we are now compiling everything and making a program for all the journalism schools, universities that have journalist program. And we are going to launch that in somewhere in February. And once that happens, we would have been reaching out to about 5,000 to 10,000 journalists, young journalists,
Fabulous.
essentially young journalists.
Fabulous.
So the content that has been created now becomes like a repository for the best practices. And then we have featured one person from India and one person from Indonesia. And that's essentially how the whole program comes together. Today we have you, as well as we have Ibu Andi Kumala from TV1. Welcome, Andi.
Thank you,
Nice to
Your
have you here.
Excellency.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
So the session is roughly divided into, it's a 2 hour session, but the first hour will be with you, Barkha. So, and then Andy will come on for the second hour, and she would usually do the program in Bahasa Indonesia because the audience is very local. But we provide AI-driven translations. So whatever
Hmm.
you say, people can turn on their translation tools. And in the final episode, we actually subtitle everything so that it will be easy for us to take it out when we do the outreach to the university starting from February. So we are dedicating this program. It's free of cost, and it's given to all journalists. And when they finish all the episodes, they can even apply for a certification. So the program would then be capacity building. Essentially, it's capacity building with the help of the journalist community from both India and Indonesia. So we've already conducted 12 episodes, and
Wow.
this has
Yeah.
been quite good. We have had some very, very senior eminent journalists from India as well as Indonesia who have participated. We'll send you a little report later so that you'll get an
Sure.
idea of what has been done.
Sure.
But we really look forward to having you here. And I thought we can have some opening remarks on today's topic from Ambassador Sandeep, and then we'll go directly with Barkha. Okay, thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you, Sachin. And so, Barkha, you now are aware of why this came about, and
Yeah.
the basically it is capacity building, content creation, and we have had very interesting sessions. We have had sessions on gender reporting, on environmental reporting, on feature writing. Ravi Vallu did feature writing. Then Srinjoy did television reporting. So
Mm-hmm.
all
Mm-hmm.
the people I knew from my OSDPR days, I roped them in. Dipanjan did on diplomatic reporting.
Yes.
So
Yes.
everybody, one eminent journalist from India and one from Indonesia, they did sessions. Basically, making world-class content reach, small newsrooms in small towns. That is the objective of this, and I think it's a unique program. It has not been attempted anywhere, and finally we will make a compendium both in terms of a book or a report and also digital. Um, Barkha, Sachin, I know for last almost 20 years, and
Yes.
she is going stronger by the day. And I was listening to the interviews you did for We the Women. I think quite
Yes.
amazing, I know, and
Thank you, sir.
yeah, fantastic. I think Sachin, that could also be shared with the people who have registered. Uh, how to conduct those interviews. For me, the interviewer should not be intimidated by the interview. I think this is the fundamental principle of any interview. We see Western journalists standing up and talking and probing very, very eminent people, whether they're presidents or prime ministers or strongmen and women. But in Asia, particularly in India, I have seen of late that our interviewers are very intimidated. They are stirring
Hmm.
the interviewee. They seem to be so docile, and the interviewee is actually conducting the interview. I think that is absolutely antithesis of how an interview should be done. That is my feeling. But I think Barkha is one person who goes by the book. She's strong. She probes, and I think we will be looking forward to listening how you do it, how you get the courage, what are the tricks, and I think there's nobody else in India better than you, Barkha, to do this, the art of interviewing. So over to Dafa. I think Dafa, will you introduce her or she comes in directly?
Well, before her presentation, I will introduce her, Mr.
Please.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Sandeep Chakravorty, for your opening, and also Pak Sachin for your opening remarks. So, good morning, everyone. Uh, Welcome to Voice of Tomorrow. So, this is a very special edition episode of this Voice of Tomorrow. And today's session will be focused on one of the most essential pillars on journalism, the art of interviewing, from building trust to asking the right question, from navigating difficult moments to uncovering deeper truth. Interviewing is not just a technique, but a craft that defines the quality and credibility of our stories. So, in this session, we have two very insightful speakers. The first one is Miss Barkha. Good morning, Miss Barkha.
Good morning.
And also the second speaker, we have Mbak Andi Kumala. Selamat pagi, Mbak.
Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi. So, we'll be starting this session with Miss Barkha. So, before you start the presentation, I will read some of your profile before doing this presentation. So, Miss Barkha Dutt is a graduate from she is a graduate from Jamia Islamia and also Science State College and Columbia University. And today she leads Mojo Story and contributes to global publications such as the Washington Post and Hindustan Times. Her work has earned her numerous accolades, including the Padma Shri and international recognition from the World Economic Forum. So, Miss Barkha, the time is yours.
Thank you so much. Once again, good morning and greetings to Ambassador Chakravorty, whom I've had the pleasure of knowing for many decades now, to Mr. Gopalan. Great work. Lovely to hear about this program. And to all our young friends here, thank you for being part of this. I'll just add a couple of lines about myself, which may give all of you a little more context as to why I'm qualified a little bit to talk to you about this. I became a journalist in 1995. We are now in 2025. And so I've had all those decades of different kinds of experience. I like to say I'm a child of television. What I mean by that is that when television news was first coming into India, the English news, private English news in India only started in 1995 with two production houses being asked to produce a 30-minute bulletin, one in English, one in Hindi, on the public broadcaster, which we call Doordarshan in India. So that's how we started. That's how young television news is actually in India. And I was among the first generation of television journalists. I was a frontline reporter and continue to be covering war, conflict within India and across the world, and also the host of several primetime shows. I spent more than 23 years in television. And then as media started changing and consumption moved to our phones, all of us now most of us consume content on our phones and our iPads. I sensed an opportunity to stay ahead of the technology curve and started Mojo's story. Mojo means magic. So the idea was, how do we bring back the magic of media, the magic of storytelling? And our platform today, for anyone who may not be familiar with it, it's a video-driven platform. And it has 2.5 million subscribers on YouTube alone, apart from being present on all other social media networks, which is where young people like yourselves, I'm sure, both create and consume content. So I come to you with two mediums, television and digital. And of course, I also write for newspapers. So I have, in a sense, a cross-medium experience, newspapers, TV, and digital. Now we are here today to talk about the art of the interview. And I completely agree with Ambassador's comments that the first essential requirement is that you are not scared of the person that you're interviewing. You can be nervous. Everybody's a little nervous because we're nervous about getting the best, maybe news point or headline or an unusual moment. We're nervous about our own performance. So internally, inside you, you can be nervous, but you can't be scared. Because if you're scared, then you're not going to be able to say many things. And you're not also going to be able to create an environment where the person you are interviewing trusts you. It's a very complex dynamic, because you're not supposed to be scared of the person you're interviewing, but at the same time, you need the person you're interviewing to place enough trust in that process that they're actually able to say something other than what they say every day at, let's say, a press conference. An interview is designed to get out something that you don't get from if that person was saying something on X. You see, please understand that interviewing has become even more specialized as a skill because we live in the age of social media. And in the age of social media, a lot of big people, powerful people, celebrities, they prefer to talk directly to their audiences. They will say, what is your need? What is the need? Why do I need you to talk? I can say what I want to. I can have a monologue. Why do I need a dialogue? I can just write a comment. I can just do a post on Insta. I can just do a TikTok video for parts of the world with this TikTok, right? So we today live in a time where more than ever before, the interview matters. In fact, I would say because we live in a social media saturated age, it matters more than it ever did, because it is so unusual to be able to get something different out of a public figure because every day they're talking directly to their audiences. Now, I would say that there are 2 or 3 different kinds of interviews, but all of them, in my opinion, need the same skill. One is a very hard news interview. You're interviewing somebody who you think is actually controversial or has done something that you disagree with, and you want to pin them down and you want them to sort of confess or get a news point out of them. So there, you're a slightly you have a slight polite but slight antagonistic tone with the person you're interviewing. The second, and this is the most common, is that whether it's a celebrity or whether it's an ordinary person, you have to show empathy so that they trust you and they open up to you. So, for example, Ambassador Chakravorty was mentioning We the Women. We the Women is a women's festival that I curate to twice a year, and we have a lot of very famous women and men achievers come on our stage, and we interview them in front of a live audience. So it's both on camera, but there's like a 1,500 people live audience watching this interview. Now, the biggest challenge here is some very, very big names come. How do we create enough comfort? How do we create enough empathy that they trust you to open up and tell you something that they have never told anybody before, right? So these are 2 different kinds of interviews. The very hard news interview where you may disagree with somebody you're interviewing, you feel like they have done something inappropriate, you want to pin them down. There, you're not necessarily showing empathy, but you're still showing civility. At least that is my style. Anybody who appears on my platform, I feel that an interview is a form of legitimacy. So, for example, I would not give space to certain people. I would not interview them. On principle, I would not interview them if I felt I could not give them basic civility. And there are interviews I have turned down because I feel that I do not want to put this person on my platform. But once I give somebody the space to be interviewed, I owe them politeness. I'm not a fan of people who look scared of the person they're interviewing, but I'm also not a fan of people who are rude to the person they're interviewing. So how do you find that middle ground? And again, as I said, there are 2 buckets. One is a very news-oriented, let's say you're interviewing somebody on air pollution, a relevant person who's responsible for air pollution, and you feel that they have not done something. Or let's say you may be looking at someone responsible for garbage in your cities. I'm giving very small everyday examples, right? Or a police person who has failed to cut down on crimes against women. So here you will be polite, but your tone will be very matter of fact, not funny, not warm. It will simply be very, very clinical, if that makes sense, right? Tone matters a lot. So your tone will be very clinical, polite, but very clinical. But if I were interviewing, as I did at my festival, let's say a big movie star, and the movie star has given 1 million interviews, and now my challenge is, how am I going to get this movie star to say something new to my audience, to me? Then I have to create an environment where the person I'm interviewing forgets that it's an interview and actually thinks that they're talking to me like a friend, right? And there I'm not trying to pin them down on any sort of scandal or accountability. I'm simply talking to them as one person to another person, right? This approach sometimes also applies to ordinary people who are not famous. And I'll give you an example. In India, we had a very tragic airline crash in June, and an Air India plane crashed as it was taking off for London. And I had done a lot of reporting on this crash, and we have a probe and a panel that is trying to find out what caused the crash. Now, the father of the man who was flying the plane, he's not spoken so far in public, but he's been, writing letters. He wants to also get to the bottom of how did this happen? And he's a 91-year-old man. He's a 91-year-old man. He lives alone. It's a sad story. Now, he agreed to talk to me, and it was just me interviewing him. He's not a famous man. He's not well known like the people who came to my festival. Nor has he done anything wrong that I have to be very clinical, very harsh, very cold in tone with him. He's just a sad man who's lost his son. Now I have to interview. The first tool that I have to take to him is empathy. So please remember that unless you are doing an interview with somebody whom you feel you're holding to account, if you're holding somebody in a position of responsibility to account, I would advise a tone that is very neutral, very professional. But if you're doing an interview with somebody who either has given many interviews and therefore you're worried that they're going to be saying nothing new, or you're interviewing somebody who's gone through a very tragic phase of their life and they've agreed to talk to you, the one thing that you need is empathy. They have to feel like they can trust you with their life. They're telling you the story of their own life, right? So a lot of things that you may have been taught in textbooks and in journalism schools. I also went to one of the world's top journalism schools. But when I actually started practicing journalism, I realized that many of these things don't apply. Life is very complicated. And for different situations, you need a different approach, right, to the art of the interview. The third is if you were interviewing an absolute stranger. So, for example, we are going to do a little exercise now. I'm an absolute stranger to you. I'm a public person, but none of you have ever met me or meeting me for the first time. Now, imagine we were at a stage, on a stage, or we were in a program, and you had to interview me. What would be your process? You would do some research on me. But let's say, and by the way, as journalists, you will find yourself in this situation often. Let's say you find yourself in a situation where you haven't prepared. Let's say you don't know very much about me except that one Google search you've done, right? And now you have no time. You've been thrown into a situation. Something has suddenly happened. This happens all the time. Especially in breaking news, sometimes something has happened 10 minutes ago. Now, none of us are experts at everything, right? We're not experts at everything. So sometimes we walk into an interview situation where we know very little. What do we do in that situation? And all I can advise you, and I want to open this up and hear your thoughts and comments also, and maybe ask some of you to do a kind of, let's reverse the roles and ask you to, how would you start an interview with me? When you don't know something, the best thing to do is to say you don't know it. I have been in so many situations where I have not had time to prepare because I have been put on camera on something that has happened 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, or is still happening while I'm on camera. Imagine that it is still developing while I am on camera. What will I say? I will say, there's a lot here that I don't know. So let me start with the basics. Could you please tell me a little bit about yourself? Right? You will often find yourselves in situations as practicing media content, even if you don't go into a hard news journalism line, even if you go into feature reporting, even if you go into content creation, even if you go into, a series of videos on, I don't know, Instagram or TikTok or whatever is your chosen platform, you will often find yourself in situations where you will not have the time to catch up with deep research. Yeah. So the one thing to remember is both the person that you're interviewing and your audience will appreciate some honesty. Everybody understands that nobody knows everything. Everybody understands. Yes, if you have taken 10 days before time with someone and you've not researched them, you will present a very sorry picture of yourself. So also remember that research is very important if you have enough time. Because if the person you're interviewing realizes that you don't know much about them, they're not going to take that process very seriously. But if you're in a situation where something has happened, you're substituting for somebody, news is just happening, you're caught unawares, it's a live event, it's a live situation, anything, something happens, then don't try and pretend like you know everything. Say, I wasn't expecting to be interviewing you this morning, so I don't know a lot about you. So why don't we start by, how did you become like, suppose you had to ask me a question. So let's do an opening question to me. What would you ask me with the little that you know about me? How would you, let's say, if the roles were reversed and I was not talking to you, but you were talking to me, which is what we want to do here. We want to have it as a dialogue. So, Dafa, let me ask you, how would you, if you had to interview me, how would you start?
Well, the first thing I will start is I'm asking about probably your condition or situation.
Explain.
And if
Let's
what
say your audience knows nothing about me, right?
yeah,
You are saying, here I am this morning. I'm going to be interviewing one of India's leading journalists. This is all that you know about me, right?
yeah,
Imagine. You know that I've been a journalist. I write columns. I was in TV, and I now run a digital platform. This much you know because you introduced me, right? This much you
yes,
know. Now you go with this material and imagine that you are interviewing me, which we are recording. Then this is going to go out to a larger audience in your country who may or may not know a lot about Indian media. So also remember context. Context is everything. Sometimes when you're interviewing somebody, your audience your audience knows who they are, and your approach of questions will be different. But sometimes an interview that you're doing may be with somebody who's not known to your audience, right? So you have to also set up your questions differently. So now imagine that you are going to, not imagine, let's actually do it. You are going to interview me for the next 5 to 8 minutes. Yeah, let's imagine. Suppose, let's just say you know nothing about me except that one line you've introduced me. Where would you start? Can you
well,
hear me? Yeah.
okay. I will start because I'm introducing you as a journalist, as a senior journalist in India to the participant here in Indonesia. So I will ask you about what's the difference between the what is that, the news reporting situation in India? Because yeah, I would like to know what is the differences between your news reporting and then in Indonesia reporting.
Okay, that's an interesting question. So let me try and answer that. So I may not know a lot about Indonesia media, just like you don't know a lot about Indian media. So automatically, it's an interesting opening question because maybe your question would be, well, good morning. Here we have one of India's leading journalists talking to us. And I would like to start by asking her to explain what is the Indian media environment like. And then maybe I can tell her a little bit about our country. So let's actually do it, right? So I would say, well, Dafa, it's very nice to meet you. Thank you for having me here. The Indian media is as varied and lively as my country. We are a country of 1.4 billion people, and our media reflects our diversity. We have, dozens of languages, and therefore our media is first of all in multiple languages, right? Secondly, it's a very thriving media world. There are parts of the world where the newspaper is dying, but not in India, where the newspaper continues to actually be an important source of information, especially in many parts of rural India, but also in the cities. Um, there are hundreds of television channels, right? And like everywhere else in the world, an entire generation has now switched to getting their content from YouTube and even WhatsApp. So people like myself, who have seen both mainstream or what's called old media and new media, are in this very interesting position where we are learning new forms of storytelling, how to use your phone, how to make a vertical video, right? How most people today are consuming content. I'm a video person. I used to do horizontal video only, right? How do I create and consume vertical video today? These are examples of the way we are changing. Um, News is primarily today owned by private players. There continues to be one strong public broadcaster, but essentially, news in India is a private enterprise. Now I will ask you, so tell me about Indonesia. How is that different?
Thank you so much, Miss Barkha, for your question. So basically, in Indonesia, we have kind of same format as the news reporting. So in Indonesia now is most famous in vertical video as well, vertical video news reporting as well. We know that TikTok, Instagram, Twitter is really famous social media platform in Indonesia, and a lot of people, which is the Gen Z until most older people, using their phone to watch news. So besides we see the news in television, and nowadays we can see the media share the news in social media platform in vertical format as well. That's the news reporting situation in Indonesia, Miss Barka.
Thank you. I'm seeing some live questions come in on the chat, but before that, since you are meant to be interviewing me, let's do a couple of more questions from you, right?
Okay. Mm.
What else would you ask me?
Okay, I will ask about the challenges probably.
Yeah.
What is the most challenges that arise in online interviews and how you overcome them?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. And I think many of the challenges are universal. The challenges are that, there was an assumption that online content would be free. We could all be whoever we wanted to. The internet would be a much easier place to create and disseminate information. Actually, when all of us became digital practitioners, we discovered that there is a thing called the algorithm. And the algorithm is a very irritating thing because what it does is it keeps feeding one kind of content to your audience. So let's say, Dafa, that you like to talk about politics, but you also like to talk about sport. Once you create an audience for politics and then you try and do sports, you will find it very difficult to get your algorithm to give you a new audience. So I think people really, really struggle with how to build new audiences and how to diversify. Secondly, the second challenge is the digital world loves polarizing content. So the more shrill you are, the more loud you are, the more theatrical you are, the more dramatic you are. People almost look at digital content today as performance. So let's say you are not into performance and you say, I want to be just a professional media person. I'm not going to do this drama. Then how do you build your numbers? So I think these are the two biggest challenges. Do you face these challenges also?
Yes, Barka, especially in the algorithm, because personally, I'm making content in social media, TikTok in particular, and I'm making like this, I'm making the content about sports and also about the photography, which is not really aligned. But I have to learn about the algorithm, what the viewers like about how we combine the photography, and then how we combine how the sports that can be interesting to the viewers, miss.
So if you notice, I often throw a question back at you. Now that I threw a question back at you because I genuinely also don't know, but the person you're interviewing will sometimes do this as a trick. So in this case, we are having a genuine exchange of information. But I have seen sometimes people will say, oh, why are you asking me this? Why don't you tell me? And it will sometimes be just an attempt to change the topic, right? So I will then say, we can talk about myself at another time. Today we're here to talk about you, right? Now that doesn't apply to your situation and my situation because we are genuinely having a dialogue. We're not really an interviewer and an interviewee, right? But a lot of times, a very well known person may not want to answer a question. And what they'll do is they'll change the topic. They'll say, if I say, what is your most embarrassing moment, they'll say, why don't you tell me yours? And either you can choose, sometimes, again, you'll have to make that judgment. Sometimes you can share a little bit about yourself to draw somebody else out. And sometimes you can see it as an attempt to change the topic, and you don't actually say anything but saying, no, we're not here today to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. Now, I'm seeing other participants also. If there's someone else who'd like to ask me a question, imagine if you were interviewing me, please do raise your hand. In the meantime, I'm also seeing questions on the chat. So let me start there. Mohammed Fadril asked, for young journalists, what makes an interview memorable, not just good? It's a great question, and I will give you a very direct answer. If the person you're interviewing says something to you that is new, this particularly applies to people who are well known, right? So there are 2 or 3 things that make the difference between something being memorable and something just being averagely good. A famous person telling you something that they've never told anybody before. Because famous people do interviews all the time. So are they going to tell you something authentic, something real? A non-famous person trusting you with their emotion, right? I recently interviewed the family. I've already told you about the Air India pilot. His father's interview was a very, very moving interview because he trusted me. It was just a 10-minute interview, but he trusted me with his pain. And when anybody watches that interview, you can see the raw emotion in it. So raw emotion often makes the difference between an interview being memorable and being just good. The third category, so there's a celebrity saying something they've never said before, raw emotion. And the third category, I would say, is when a public official, an official in power, either concedes a mistake or takes ownership for something that the people care about, accountability. So if your interview helps in accountability, if your interview moves the needle and gives raw emotion, right? Those things, or if a famous person tells you something new that they've never told anybody before, I think that would be the difference between a good and a memorable interview. The next question is from Arun. What is the secret to building an instant rapport during a tough interview? It's a great question, and everybody has different approaches. My approach is to always smile. Unless somebody has really irritated me, I believe that you can be very tough and still end every tough question with a smile. So what happens is people tend to underestimate you and they will say more than they intended to. This I can tell you as a trick. Be a pleasant person. Be a pleasant person. Be pleasant with the person you're interviewing, even if inside your mind you say, I'm going to ask very tough questions. Being pleasant doesn't mean you have to not ask the awkward questions. I have asked people about being accused of murder with a smile because it's a legal case. It's not gossip. So I have said, how did you feel in this phase of your life when you were accused of? This is a real life example. We have a politician who at one stage was accused of murdering his wife, right? And I was interviewing him. He was acquitted. That case is over. But I was able to ask him that question. I didn't smile because it was not a funny question, but I asked him the tough question, but in a soft tone. So I said, this phase of your life must have been very difficult for you. Wherever you went, people were whispering, this man has murdered his wife. How did you cope with it? Now, that last question built some empathy into the question. So he was willing to answer it. Otherwise, even I was a bit awkward asking the question. But I knew I had to ask it because it was such a big part of his life at that time when I was talking to him. Right? So be pleasant. Sometimes when it's a public figure, you can ask a question and you can say, let me give you an example. You seem like such a nice person, such a polite person to talk to here. Why is there such a different avatar of you in Parliament to somebody who shouts a lot? So it's partly friendly, but it is partly naughty, it's partly mischievous. So my experience usually is empathy where it's needed, politeness always, an element of surprise. Don't be predictable. If your interviewer can anticipate, these are the 5 questions this person is going to ask me, not just is it boring content, right? But it's also people who are very practiced at giving interviews, they will do it mechanically. So to Arun, empathy, politeness, a little bit of element of surprise, and being unafraid. Something the ambassador also said. Be unafraid. If a person has agreed to talk to you, they have some interest in talking to you. Remember that. Otherwise, they won't even agree to talk to you. So you don't have to be afraid. Right? I saw one other question that I can answer. Fear. Nowadays, every media and podcast always gets fast and yet unique, as how their eyes seeing the public cases is one part of that media existing. How to be fast and watch the public case to be unique, yet okay, I don't really understand this question, but what I understand is how can you be quick and yet reliable? How can you catch something that everybody is talking about and yet be reliable? That's a great question. Because even if you're not in news, we are living in such a fast moving media consumption time. And I think it's a very good question. And I think I would still say being first is less important than being unique, since you've used the word unique. Do something that people will remember. In the end, people will not remember whether you did it first. If you do it better than others, they will remember that. So it's okay if you say, you know what, if I do this interview now, I'll do it poorly, but I'll get it first. But if I do it tomorrow after one day and I have the chance to do it, I'll be better prepared. Just as an example. Secondly, something we haven't spoken about is a word called authenticity. It is very important for an interviewer or any content creator in any genre to develop a style that is your own style. Today, when you think of the big global names, you think of an Oprah Winfrey, you think of a Christian Amanpour, or anybody else in your own country also, you will see that they have a style, right? That style is their own style. That style is not trying to copy somebody else. So whether they're tough talking or whether they're very warm or whatever they are, it's their style, it's their personality. So you have to bring a little bit of your personality into your content to be good at it. People are not there just to watch the person you're interviewing. They're there also to watch you. That is what you have to remember. So while you are trying to build a rapport with your interviewee, you also have to yourself build a rapport with your audience. If you do not have a rapport with your audience, nobody is interested in the interview you're doing. So please remember that who you are, what your style is. Over time, you will hope that your audience will be loyal to you, will know your style, will respect you, will come to the content as much to watch you as they will to watch the person that you're interviewing. The next question is, how do you decide when to interrupt and when to let someone speak? This is the biggest art. This is the biggest, and it's something that even after 30 years, I sometimes get wrong. I'll still see even though if you see my interviews on Mojo Story, you will see I really let people talk. And even then, sometimes you have to interrupt because the person is going on for too long, right? Time is running out. It could also be something practical like time is running out. Or you can see they're going all over the place, not answering the question. You have to interrupt respectfully. Always interrupt. Come in with a question, they say, I'm so sorry, I had to interject there, but I was just thinking. Or when I was listening to you say that, I thought. So make it about them so they don't feel they're being silenced, right? Make it about them. Well, I was just listening. That is such an interesting thing you just said. I had a follower. Little bit of flattery works quite well in making people comfortable. Yeah. Don't interrupt people if you can help it mid-sentence. Wait for them to finish a sentence and get your word in. It's like a Dodge car. You all know Dodge cars, no? You have to get your word in that pause between sentence, at the end of a sentence and the beginning of a next one. A lot of questions here. Indonesia faces readers who easily believe hoaxes. How do you view this as a journalist, and what is the situation in India? This is another very good question. Fake news is a universal phenomena. It is a byproduct of the digital age we live in. Today, gatekeeping is there in big media organizations, but today anybody technically with a phone and an internet connection can be a broadcaster, right? I think media literacy, media awareness programs like this are really the only ways to tackle this, where you create awareness. For example, when my team researches a story, I always say I don't allow Wikipedia, for example, as a source of research. I don't allow it. I'm like, no. Then they'll do ChatGPT, right? I'll say if you're going to ChatGPT or use Perplexity, you will have to ask your prompt to provide you verified or verifiable sources of information. So in the end, though we keep saying newspapers are dying, the thing that I accept as a source of information is a newspaper website or a well-known think tank or government data, right? Official data. So I think there are only two ways to get around the sort of epidemic of fake news. One is you create awareness that not everything you read and watch is true. You live in the age of doctored images. You live in the age of AI-generated images. As a consumer, as a reader, as a watcher, we must verify, is this coming from a place that we trust? As a content creator, this is even more challenging because sometimes in the speed of wanting to be first, we'll pick up something that turns out to be false. So please remember, being first is a desirable aim, but it is less desirable than being correct. Nothing matters more than your credibility in the end. And it may not feel like it for the age we live in, but the people who will survive the onslaught of artificial intelligence, the people who will survive the churn in media, are the people who have kept their credibility alive. Here's another question. Mojo's story often covers sensitive women's rights issues in India, where sources are often afraid to speak due to social stigma. How do you, your team, quickly build trust in the field to make vulnerable women comfortable sharing their stories safely and openly? It's another great question. So I'll tell you, you also build a reputation over time, right? You build a reputation for being that place which is credible, which is balanced, which is sensitive, which is not out to exploit women, which is unafraid to pick up their issues. We have built through our work this reputation. And sometimes I'll tell you, we don't even have to go out to look for these stories. These stories come to us. I got an email yesterday from a woman who is in a wheelchair, and she is fighting a case against sexual violence in court. And her story is of two fights: the fight for justice and the fight for special needs equality, accessible public spaces, and so on. She doesn't know me. I don't know her. She wrote to me because she trusts me over time. That's the reputation I've built. So please remember that your reputation is everything. Your reputation will determine, and yes, there will be people who, who'll have critical things to say. There'll be people who'll hate you. There'll be people who love you. You'll have to ignore that noise. You'll have to stand for something. So, for example, we like to stand for the fact that we are facts. We are driven by facts in a polarized media world. We are still professional journalists in an age where that norm or that ethic is on the decline, and that we are unafraid to put people first. We will tell the stories of people who don't have a voice. And because we have built that reputation, people trust us with those stories. Okay. Two questions from Sachin, an interesting question. Two questions on your personal experiences. Have you ever asked a question you immediately regretted? Often. What's the most surprising answer you've ever received, and how did you handle it? So I think the toughest questions to ask are personal questions. And you have to always decide whether it is relevant to your interview to ask that question, right? So, for example, I will not ask any question that is only in the realm of gossip. I will not ask any question that is unverified. But sometimes I will ask a personal question that I think is, I don't know, natural. But the person who's being asked that question doesn't like that question. And they will immediately sort of get irritated and say, why are you asking this question? So just now I was doing an interview with one of our big actors called Jaya Bachchan, and she's married to Amitabh Bachchan, who's India's most iconic superstar actor, right? And Jaya Bachchan she's a senior, she's much older than me. She's also very stern. She gets angry very easily. Like, people know that about her. So when I sat down, I told her, and this is it's a trick, but I also said it naturally. I said, ma'am, I am not scared of heads of state. I'm not scared of terrorists. I'm not scared of anybody, but I'm feeling very scared today. I think you're going to scold me. Everybody started laughing. She also started laughing. It just disarmed her, right? And then she said, well, if you're sensible, I won't scold you. But if you're going to ask me stupid questions, I'm going to scold you. So I laughed a bit. She also laughed a bit. But some of the questions that I asked her, she loved, and some of the questions she didn't like. And it will happen in any interview. So, have you ever asked a question you've immediately regretted? I never asked a question, Sachin, that I've regretted, but I've regretted the words I've chosen for that question. Like, what happens is, because you're thinking on your feet, you have to frame the question in a certain way. And sometimes the words you choose, you say, oh, I could have said that better. And when I can, I will say, let me rephrase that. Please understand the one big art of interviewing. Don't hesitate to correct yourself. If you feel something has come out in the wrong way, with maybe an insensitive word, you can correct it and say, I could have said that better. Let me try and say that differently. There's another question here. How should journalists respond to external or internal pressure while maintaining independence? I mean, this is a question that we're all struggling with worldwide. I will again say, be authentic, be true to yourself. There are all kinds of external pressures all over the world. This is not unique to Indonesia, it's not unique to India. It is in America, where there's the First Amendment guaranteeing free speech. Media is struggling with this, right? The biggest challenge to media today is money. Most people struggle with who will pay for news, because nobody in the audience is willing to pay for news. So to me, that is the biggest, more than any other pressure. And secondly, the other onslaught that is coming is artificial intelligence. What can you do that the machine can't? Ask yourself that every day. And what you can do that no machine can. No machine can do this ever, is to be yourself. No machine can become you. So build a reputation where your audience comes to watch you or read you, not for the people, not only for the people that you bring, but for who you are. Every other art will become secondary to the art of building a relationship between you and your audience, right? So therefore, you were going to interview me, but now I've taken all of your time. And at some point, you should have said, "Ma'am, may I interject? Because we have 5 minutes left or 10 minutes left, and I have so many questions to ask you." That's an example. The guest will just take over the show as I did just now.
Yes, Miss Barkha, but I'm so sorry because we have 5 more minutes for the session.
So please ask me a last couple of questions if you want.
Well, maybe the last question for you is, mm, What's the secret to build instant report during a tough interview?
A rapport,
Yeah,
how to
the
build a
instant
rapport.
report.
I would say you can't be unafraid. You can't be afraid, but the person you're interviewing should also not be afraid of. It's a very complicated thing. They should feel comfortable enough to let their guard drop. If they do not let their guard drop, if they're all sitting like that, controlling their answers, right? They're not going to say anything real to you. What does any person doing an interview want? They want somebody to say something that is new, or that is true, or that is emotional, or that is informational. For any of these things to happen, they cannot be very uncomfortable while talking to you. They have to forget. The biggest art of the interview is to make the person you're interviewing forget that it's an interview. That is what builds rapport. Make them forget somehow that there are cameras and lights around. Make them forget that they're wearing a mic. Make them forget just for those few minutes. Somehow talk to them, make eye contact, look at them directly, smile when needed, look serious when needed, make them feel that they're being heard, and make them forget that it's an interview. Because if you can make them forget that it's an interview, they will say something unpracticed to you.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Barkha. We have so much insight from your session here. So yeah, interviewing is more than just asking question. It's gateway to the truth, context, and human experience. We need to show our empathy, and also, as you mentioned, being polite is always. It's the moment where preparation meets instinct, where structure meets empathy, and where a journalist transform information into insights. Thank you so much, Miss Barka, for your session, from your presentation, also from the very active discussion. Thank you so much. And for the next session, we have Mbak Andi Kumala. Selamat
Yes.
pagi, Mbak Andi Kumala.
Thank you. Just before Andy speaks, I'd like to thank all of you and say Rafa, that was a very good summary. And thank you to Ambassador Chakravarty, to Sachin, and to all of you. Great questions, and congratulations on this excellent program. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Miss
Bye,
Barka.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Baik, selamat pagi Mbak Andi Kumala.
Baik, selamat pagi, Mas Dava.
Selamat pagi Mbak. Mungkin sebelum memulai sesi presentasi dari Mbak Andi, mungkin saya izin untuk menyampaikan profil singkat dari Mbak Andi. Mbak Andi Kumala memulai karir di TV One sebagai reporter dan presenter dari Kabar Pagi pada tahun 2007. Mbak Andi Kumala merupakan lulusan jurnalistik Ilmu Komunikasi Universitas Indonesia pada 2006. Beliau telah mewawancarai sejumlah tokoh nasional secara eksklusif, seperti Wakil Presiden Yusuf Kala, serta Irjen Pol Anton Carlian, serta meliput KPK dan DPR RI sebagai bagian dari tugasnya. Baik, Mbak Andi Kumala, waktu dan tempat dipersilakan.
Baik, terima kasih, Mas Dava. Dan Your Excellency, the Ambassador of India to Indonesia, Mr. Sandeep Chakravorty. I'm honored by your presence. Dan juga Mr. Sachin, dan juga para peserta dari Zoom meeting ini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Karena saya didaulat untuk memberikan materi atau sharing session dalam bahasa Indonesia, maka juga saya izin untuk menyampaikannya dalam bahasa Indonesia. Mr. Sandep, tadi sangat menarik sebenarnya apa yang disampaikan oleh Mrs. Barkha Dutt, dan sangat-sangat terhormat, sangat-sangat bangga bisa mendapatkan sharing session bersama dengan Mrs. Barkha Dutt tadi. Insight-nya sangat luar biasa, apalagi beliau adalah senior jurnalis di India. Memang saat ini ya, di era digital dan media sosial, menjadi jurnalis hari ini sangat jauh berbeda dibandingkan 2 dekade lalu mungkin. Saya kurang lebih 18 tahun menjadi seorang jurnalis, dan itu juga di TV One, tidak berpindah-pindah ke media lain, karena TV One menurut saya adalah media yang khusus, segmentasinya memang khusus news ya, khusus berita, dan passionnya di situ, sehingga saya kurang lebih hampir 2 dekade ini berada di TV One. Dan saat ini kalau saya lihat di tengah derasnya arus informasi, jurnalis Indonesia tuh tidak lagi hanya berlomba-lomba untuk menjadi yang paling benar dan menjadi yang paling cepat ya. Dulu di awal-awal saya masuk sebagai seorang jurnalis di tahun 2007, itu kita berlomba-lomba untuk eksklusif, mendapatkan informasi atau berita ataupun gambar paling cepat, dan juga yang eksklusif atau hanya kita sendiri saja yang mendapatkannya. Namun sekarang ini sudah berbeda zamannya. Kecepatan seringkali sudah berhadapan langsung dengan akurasi. Di era digital dan media sosial, siapapun bisa menjadi penyampai berita. Informasi beredar tanpa filter, tanpa verifikasi, dan seringkali tanpa tanggung jawab. Ini siapa sebenarnya sumbernya? Nah, disinilah posisi jurnalis profesional diuji, bukan sekedar menyampaikan apa yang sedang viral, tetapi memastikan apa yang disampaikan itu benar, berimbang, dan juga bermakna bagi publik. Nah, tantangan berikutnya di dunia jurnalis dewasa ini adalah misinformasi dan disinformasi. Tadi ada juga peserta yang menanyakan ke Mrs. Barkha ya, hoax, narasi manipulatif, hingga propaganda digital yang saat ini semakin canggih karena teknologi. Jurnalis-jurnalis muda saat ini dituntut untuk memiliki kemampuan verifikasi yang kuat, kemudian bisa berpikir kritis, dan tidak mudah terjebak pada framing yang menyesatkan, yang mudah sekali tersebar. Kredibilitas media saat ini tidak perlu dibangun dari jumlah klik ya dalam video yang disebar, tapi dari kepercayaan publik, dari kepercayaan masyarakat. Tapi di sisi lain, jurnalis juga berhadapan dengan tekanan ekonomi dan politik. Kita tahu bersama ya, mungkin Mr. Dava nih, Mas Dava yang hidup di atau bekerja di Indonesia, mengalami sendiri kondisi ekonomi politik kita, kondisi sosial politik kita di Indonesia tuh nggak ada yang nggak politik ya, nggak ada yang nggak politis. Nah, model bisnis media yang berubah pun membuat ruang redaksi itu semakin ramping. Ini juga menurut saya adalah dampak dari politik. Sementara tuntutan kerja dari seorang jurnalis itu semakin tinggi karena kita tetap dituntut untuk menjaga independensi, etika, dan keberanian yang seringkali diuji oleh kepentingan, baik yang terlihat maupun yang tersembunyi. Tapi memang di balik semua tantangan itu tentu ada peluang besar juga yang mungkin bisa kita lihat. Teknologi contohnya. Ini memberi ruang bagi jurnalis-jurnalis muda yang saat ini lebih kreatif, mendalam, dan lebih dekat dengan audiens. Karena kan sosial media itu sebenarnya membuat wadah untuk berinteraksi langsung dengan audiensnya. Kalau dulu kan monolog ya, satu arah. Nah, sekarang dengan adanya sosial media atau dunia digital itu bisa memberikan ruang interaksi antara jurnalis itu dengan publik atau audiensnya. Data jurnalistik, storytelling visual, dan jurnalisme yang berbasis solusi juga bisa menjadi jalan baru yang bisa menghasilkan liputan-liputan yang berdampak. Jadi saat ini memang menjadi jurnalis berarti menjaga nalar publik ya, bukan sekedar melaporkan peristiwa, tetapi juga memberikan konteks, membuka perspektif, dan menjaga ruang demokrasi tetap sehat. Tantangannya besar, tetapi peranannya jauh lebih penting. Jadi pesan saya di awal diskusi kita ini untuk jurnalis-jurnalis muda Indonesia yang juga hadir di forum ini, mungkin di tangan kalianlah integritas ini perlu dijaga, keberanian untuk tetap kritis perlu dijaga dan komitmen untuk selalu berpihak pada kebenaran. Jangan goyah dengan dunia sosial media, netizen mungkin yang maha benar, karena keakuratan dan juga kredibilitas itu masih berada pada kita media arus utama. Dan itu adalah dedikasi kita kepada masyarakat ya, bukan kepada siapa-siapa, tapi kepada masyarakat. Dan kita media, kita jurnalis memang harus berpihak, tapi berpihak kepada apa? Kepada kebenaran. Saya menyiapkan sedikit slide untuk materi ini. Apakah Mas Dava ini mengizinkan untuk saya share screen sendiri?
Baik, boleh Mbak Andi. Mungkin
Oke, saya coba ya. Jadi saya fokus untuk bagaimana the art of interviewing ini dengan mengambil angle seni melakukan wawancara ala news anchor. Apa sih peran news anchor dan pentingnya wawancara? Jadi news anchor ini perannya menyampaikan informasi secara akurat dan menarik sebagai penghubung antara fakta dan audiens. Pentingnya wawancara memungkinkan penggalian informasi secara langsung dari narasumber dan menambah nilai human interest berita. Jadi kalau kita hanya riset, kita tidak bisa secara langsung mendapatkan informasi dari sumbernya ya. Tapi itu adalah istilahnya kita sudah mendapatkan berita yang diramu. Kemudian, bagaimana sih seni wawancara? Seni wawancara ini meliputi komunikasi efektif, penguasaan materi, dan etika profesional untuk berita yang menarik dan mudah dipahami. The art of interviewing. Key message-nya, wawancara adalah seni menggali informasi melalui percakapan terstruktur untuk tujuan tertentu. Jadi bedanya wawancara dengan mengobrol biasa atau bercakap-cakap adalah wawancara ini punya tujuan tertentu ya. Poin dari wawancara adalah menggabungkan teknik jurnalistik dan komunikasi interpersonal. Tujuannya mendapatkan jawaban yang jelas, jujur, dan bermakna. Dan kunci dari wawancara itu adalah terstruktur, kemudian mendapatkan kepercayaan dari narasumber, dan kita memiliki kendali pada percakapan. Jadi wawancara bukan sekedar tanya jawab ya. Kalau teman-teman jurnalis ya sudah berpengalaman lah ya di lapangan, selama ini sudah mempraktekkan. Wawancara adalah seni mengelola percakapan untuk mendapatkan informasi yang jujur dan memiliki makna. Dan hari ini kita akan melihat bagaimana menggabungkan teknik dasar wawancara dengan dinamika wawancara ala jurnalis televisi. Jadi tadi juga sempat disinggung oleh Mrs. Barkha bahwa memahami jenis wawancara dan tujuan wawancara itu membantu kita memiliki atau memilih pendekatan yang tepat. Jadi, setiap jenis wawancara punya tujuan yang berbeda. Ada yang terstruktur, interview yang cocok untuk memperoleh konsistensi dan juga objektif. Kemudian ada yang semi-structure, memberikan ruang yang eksplorasi, lebih fleksibel namun terarah. Kemudian ada yang unstructured, lebih natural untuk menggali insight. Kemudian ada behavioral dan situasional, menggali pengalaman dan pola pikir. Dan ada yang teknikal, fokus pada pengalaman dan kemampuan. Jadi ini biasanya untuk narasumber-narasumber yang memiliki kompetensi tertentu, misalnya dokter, psikolog, kemudian aparat, keamanan. Ini contoh wawancara saya dengan Bapak Yusuf Kalla, Wakil Presiden ke-10 dan 12. Waktu itu ini terkait dengan demonstrasi besar-besaran ya, 17+8 pada Agustus yang lalu. Crafting strong and relevant question. Pertanyaan yang baik selalu dimulai dari tujuan. Apa tujuan wawancara kita? Tujuannya apakah menggali informasi, Kemudian tujuannya adalah untuk mendapatkan data atau memprofiling seseorang. Setelah kita tahu tujuan dari wawancara ini, maka kita akan lebih mudah untuk menyusun pertanyaannya. Mulai dari yang ringan, kemudian inti, dan kemudian refleksi. Dalam wawancara, gunakan bahasa sederhana dan jelas. Tidak perlu yang berbelit-belit, tidak perlu menggunakan kosakata-kosakata yang sulit, tetapi justru nantinya tujuan dari pertanyaannya itu tidak tercapai. Dan prioritaskan pertanyaan terbuka agar narasumber ini bisa bercerita. Gunakan probing why, how, what happen next. Jadi open question. Pertanyaan yang bisa membuat narasumber bercerita, bukan yang jawabannya ya, tidak, ya, tidak. Nah, kalau jawaban narasumber ya, tidak, kita juga jadi harus banyak banget menyiapkan list pertanyaan. Dan jangan lupa hindari pertanyaan yang mengarahkan. Pertanyaan yang mengarahkan itu contohnya adalah, jadi benarkan Anda melakukannya untuk ini? Alasan Anda ini kan? Itu udah mengarahkan jatuhnya. Selanjutnya adalah building comfort and trust. Seperti tadi yang lagi-lagi ya, saya selalu merefleksi materi dari Mrs. Barkha karena itu sangat menarik dan itu juga sebenarnya sudah merangkum semua inti dari materi hari ini, The Art of Interviewing. Jika Anda tidak kenal dengan narasumber Anda, apa yang harus Anda lakukan? Kemudian ketika Anda baru pertama kali bertemu dengan narasumber Anda, bagaimana Anda membuka perbincangan, pembicaraan, wawancara? Nah, maka wawancara yang baik dimulai dari rasa aman dulu nih. Narasumber kita itu harus merasa comfort dulu nih sama kita, harus merasa percaya dulu nih sama kita. Siapa sih orang ini? Kenapa aku harus jujur sama dia? Kenapa aku harus jawab pertanyaan dia dengan baik? Pembukaan hangat dan penjelasan alur bahasa tubuh yang netral membuat narasumber ini akan lebih terbuka dan lebih nyaman untuk memberikan jawabannya. Gunakan juga active listening ya, dengan kontak mata, tatap matanya, kemudian mengangguk jika membenarkan pernyataannya, dan jaga agar nada bicara kita tetap netral, jangan terlalu tinggi dan jangan terlalu rendah. Kemudian jeda ini maksudnya adalah untuk memberi ruang ya. Terkadang kita ingin buru-buru nih memotong pertanyaan atau jawaban narasumber. Padahal sedikit memberikan jeda, mungkin itu adalah ruang dia untuk berpikir, mengeksplorasi jawaban selanjutnya. Kadang diam justru membuat mereka ini mau melanjutkan ceritanya. Kemudian yang terpenting adalah sikap non-judgmental. Jadi jangan menjudge sebelum semuanya terjelaskan. Dan ciptakan rasa aman dan profesional. Follow-up strategi. Follow-up adalah senjata utama seorang pewawancara. Teknik seperti drill down, encoding, strategi pause, clarification, and contrast question, reframing pertanyaan untuk jawaban yang lebih jujur. Jadi, drill down itu mulai dari yang umum ke khusus. Jadi, kita menyiapkan pertanyaan pada dasarnya dari yang umum dulu, baru ke yang khusus. Kemudian kita mengulangi kata kunci narasumber. Jadi biasanya ini dilakukan saat kita ingin memotong atau melanjutkan ke pertanyaan berikutnya, kita mengambil kata kunci yang disebutkan oleh narasumber. Kemudian, seperti tadi ada strategi pause, jeda untuk bisa memberikan ruang kepada narasumber, dan kita juga bisa menggali detail yang lebih kaya dengan melakukan klarifikasi. Jangan takut menggunakan jeda ya tadi untuk memancing jawaban tambahan. Handling challenge and maintaining control. Dalam wawancara kita pasti bertemu dengan narasumber yang menghindar, kemudian yang jawabannya terlalu panjang atau defensif. Kuncinya adalah harus tetap tenang, profesional, dan mengarahkan percakapan dengan halus. Anda bisa gunakan kata seperti, mari kita kembali ke topik utama. untuk menjaga alur. Dan selalu tutup dengan ringkasan agar pesan utama jelas ya. Jadi biasanya narasumber menjelaskan panjang lebar, kita boleh mengutip sedikit ujung dari kalimatnya atau mungkin kata kuncinya untuk ringkasan agar pesannya dapat ditangkap oleh penonton. Ya, itu aja untuk materi The Art of Interviewing-nya. Jadi ini seni wawancara ala news anchor ya. Saya rasa kita mungkin melanjutkan saja dengan diskusi karena itu lebih interaktif. Kalau ada pertanyaan boleh kita tanya jawab aja untuk selanjutnya.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Andi atas pemaparannya yang telah memberikan insight atas bagaimana teknik interview, tapi dari perspektif news anchor, sehingga mungkin ada sedikit perbedaan antara bagaimana interviewing, ya interview yang dilakukan mungkin dari jurnalis dan juga dari Mbak Andi sendiri sebagai news anchor. Mungkin saya izin untuk membuka pertanyaan terlebih dahulu ya Mbak Andi. Mungkin nanti peserta yang lain juga dapat ter-encourage untuk bisa memberikan pertanyaan dan memulai diskusi dengan Mbak Andi terkait topik ini. Saya izin membuka pertanyaan dengan bagaimana cara Mbak untuk menggali jawaban yang jujur dan mendalam tanpa terkesan menginterogasi narasumber, Mbak.
Oke, jadi bagaimana cara menggali pertanyaan tanpa terkesan menginterogasi. Jadi seperti yang saya sampaikan tadi ya, penting untuk membuat narasumber kita comfort dan safe, merasa nyaman dan aman dulu berbicara dengan kita. Dia harus percaya dulu dengan kita, kemudian dia harus merasa eh, kita ini pantas untuk mendapatkan jawabannya. Jadi memang harus dibuat dulu rasa aman, kita melakukan pembukaan yang hangat, kemudian bahasa tubuh yang netral sehingga narasumber ini akan lebih terbuka tanpa merasa diinterogasi. Jadi harus dimulai dengan sesuatu yang membuka, yang mencairkan suasana dulu, barulah nanti kita masuk ke pertanyaan-pertanyaan inti. Jadi itu bagaimana membangun kepercayaan antara narasumber dengan kita dulu, baru kita bisa masuk ke pertanyaan yang kita pengen dapet nih poinnya. Jadi intinya adalah membangun hubungan yang safe dulu dengan narasumber. Dia harus merasa aman dan nyaman dulu. Itu sih, Mas Dava.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak. Mungkin untuk para peserta dipersilakan untuk menulis pertanyaan di kolom komentar. Mungkin saya juga izin untuk ada follow up Mbak. Kan tadi untuk bagaimana kita mendapatkan jawaban yang tidak terkesan narasumber itu seperti sedang diinterogasi. Narasumber itu harus dibuat nyaman dan juga dapat dia dapat mempercayai kita bukan sebagai dalam interview tapi ya kayak ngobrol aja. Nah, saya mau bertanya Mbak untuk eh, apa apalagi Mbak sebagai news anchor di mana eh, mungkin ada narasumber yang pertama kali tampil live di TV gitu Mbak dan mungkin dia tegang. Nah, biasanya pertanyaan pembuka apa yang biasanya Mbak gunakan untuk bisa mencairkan suasana Mbak?
Oke, jadi sebenarnya dalam interview itu 80%-nya adalah persiapan. Show-nya itu 20% aja. Jadi kita sudah harus siap dulu, kita harus menguasai materi, mengenali siapa narasumbernya, sudah punya daftar pertanyaan, dan barulah show itu bisa berjalan dengan lancar. 80%-nya adalah persiapan yang membuat sebuah wawancara itu berhasil. Dengan bagaimana caranya membuat narasumber itu aman, pertanyaan seperti apa yang harus kita tanyakan dulu. Jadi pada saat jeda, wawancara itu dimulai dari persiapan. Jadi pada saat sebelum on air, kita sudah pre-interview dengan narasumber. Kita sudah mengobrol dulu sama narasumber. Kita sudah harus membangun kedekatan dan membuatnya nyaman. Jadi itu sebelum show. Bagaimana setelah show? Tiba-tiba narasumbernya ini grogi, nggak bisa ngomong, demam panggung. Nah, disitulah kita harus menjadi penetral, karena kita memang namanya ini anchor ya, dia yang menjadi anchor. Maka pertanyaan-pertanyaan sederhana dulu yang tidak langsung pada intinya. Jadi misalnya kita sapa dulu, apa kabar Bu? Sehat hari ini? Kemudian kalau dia adalah keluarga seorang korban yang misalnya meninggal dunia atau mungkin korban kriminalitas, kita sampaikan dulu duka cita kita. Kami turut prihatin dengan peristiwa yang menimpa anak ibu. Kami turut berduka cita atas meninggalnya anak ibu. Itu dulu. Dengan begitu dia sudah mulai merasa diperhatikan, merasa tersentuh. Kemudian masuklah kita ke pertanyaan. Ibu, kami mohon maaf, tapi kami hanya ingin tahu sebenarnya kronologi kejadian yang Ibu tahu tuh seperti apa. Nah, seperti itu sih. Jadi kita pelan-pelan kita membuat dia nyaman dengan pertanyaan yang merasa dia dimengerti, diperhatikan terlebih dahulu. Gitu sih, Mas Dava.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Andi. Mungkin ini ada pertanyaan dari peserta dari webinar ini, dari Dewi Arum. Bagaimana jurnalis menjaga sikap non-judgmental saat berhadapan dengan narasumber yang memiliki pandangan kontroversial?
Kontroversial. Bagaimana jurnalis menjaga sikap non-judgmental saat
Iya,
berhadapan dengan narasumber yang memiliki pandangan kontroversial? Begini, ketika Anda menjadi seorang jurnalis ataupun news anchor, peran Anda sebagai orang yang menginterview, orang yang mengajukan pertanyaan, orang yang mewawancara, maka posisi Anda selalu netral. Anda tidak boleh terlihat berpihak. Meskipun narasumber Anda ini Anda tahu nih, dia ini salah sebenarnya, dia ini bohong, Anda tahu. Tapi Anda tetap harus dalam posisi netral. Makanya tadi nggak boleh ada pertanyaan yang mengarahkan. Anda kan emang begini Pak, Anda kan emang salah Pak, gitu nggak boleh ya. Sebagai jurnalis Anda harus menjaga netralitas, baik itu di depan layar maupun di balik layar ya. Karena data tidak hanya Anda peroleh dari wawancara saja, ada banyak cara untuk mengumpulkan data-data lainnya. Nah, supaya tidak menjudge dari narasumber itu, tetap usahakan pertanyaannya adalah pertanyaan yang terbuka. Pertanyaannya harus tetap terbuka menurut pendapat Anda, menurut perspektif Anda. Jadi biarkan narasumber yang memberikan statementnya, bukan Anda. Kalau narasumber yang memberikan statementnya, mau itu kontroversial, mau itu menjudge, itu tidak masalah. Anda tidak akan disebut KPI ya, tapi kalau sudah Anda nih yang menjudge duluan, nah itu sudah melanggar etika. Jadi berikan pertanyaan terbuka dan menurut sudut pandang narasumber itu kita tidak menyimpulkan dan tidak membenarkan. Kalau kita mau klarifikasi, kita boleh klarifikasi kembali. Tetapi menurut undang-undang seperti ini Pak aturannya, pendapat Anda seperti apa? Kayak gitu. Oke, apa
baik.
saya langsung baca aja pertanyaan
Boleh,
selanjutnya, Mas
boleh, Mbak.
Dava? Bagaimana cara memancing narasumber yang sulit ngomong? Nah, ini ada kesamaan ya. Jadi selalu pre-interview terlebih dahulu. Pre-interview terlebih dahulu sebelum on air. Karena ini kan ceritanya untuk di studio ya. Pre-interview dulu sebelum on air, kemudian buat dia ada merasa nyaman dengan kita. Setelah itu coba sampaikan kepada narasumber. Ibu, nanti kalau kita ngobrol-ngobrol atau kita tanya kepada ibu, bisa nggak ibu cerita agak panjang gitu? Bisa nggak ibu ceritain aja kejadiannya seperti apa? Nah, dengan pre-interview itu akan membantu orang-orang yang susah ngomong atau jawabannya ya tidak. Kemudian yang terpenting adalah open question. Jadi selalu pertanyaan terbuka. Why, how, bagaimana, kenapa, jangan apa Bu, apa, ya hindari pertanyaan tertutup ya atau tidak. Karena orang yang pendiam mungkin hanya akan menjawab ya atau tidak, dan saya sering sekali mendapatkan narasumber seperti itu. Belum lagi kita via Zoom nih wawancaranya, jadi seperti saksi warga dalam kasus pembunuhan. Nah, tadi pagi saya baru mewawancarai seorang kepala lingkungan di kasus pembunuhan ibu oleh anaknya sendiri di Medan, Sumatera Utara. Kita ingin tahu nih, polisi belum mau rilis kejadiannya seperti apa, terduga pelakunya bagaimana, kita mau tahu dari informasi dari kepala lingkungan. Tapi kepala lingkungan ini, jarak rumahnya ternyata jauh dari rumah korban atau rumah peristiwa ini, rumah keluarga ini. Keluarga ini menurut para tetangga sangat tertutup, tidak bergaul dengan tetangga, sehingga tidak ada yang tahu masalahnya seperti apa dan apa yang terjadi dari keluarga itu. Sangat minim informasi, sehingga untungnya kita sudah riset terlebih dahulu dari media-media berita dan data-datanya juga dari kontributor kita di lapangan, sehingga pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang kita konfirmasi ke narasumber ini bersifat konfirmasi aja. Jadi kita kemudian jadinya pertanyaan kita yang panjang, jawabannya dia yang pendek ya, karena kita punya data. Jadi misalnya kita bertanya, menurut saksi mata yang ada di TKP, ayah dari atau orang tua dari terduga anak berhadapan dengan hukum ini berada di lantai 2, sementara korban berada di lantai 1. Apa sebenarnya hubungan atau bagaimana sebenarnya hubungan dari kedua orang tua terduga pelaku ini? Apakah memang mereka sudah ada indikasi pisah atau seperti apa? Jadi kita memancing dia untuk bercerita dengan kita memiliki data sebelumnya. Seperti itu. Mohon pencerahan jika jawaban dari narasumber minta off the record, padahal jawaban itu dari tujuan kita mewawancara narasumber. Sebagai seorang jurnalis, kita punya kode etik dan kita punya aturan. Kita harus menghormati narasumber. Jika memang off the record, maka kita tidak boleh untuk menanyakan itu pada saat on air. Kita ambil saja atau buat saja pertanyaan lain yang bukan seperti yang di-note oleh narasumber itu, tapi mungkin dengan logika atau analisa dari penonton dia bisa menemukan jawaban itu sendiri. Jadi kreatif untuk membuat pertanyaan tidak secara langsung seperti yang diinginkan oleh narasumber, sehingga narasumber tidak perlu menjawab atau mengeluarkan kata-kata yang dia minta untuk off the record, tapi kita mengambil pertanyaan angle lain yang mungkin secara tidak langsung ya kita bisa menganalisa jawabannya, oh seperti ini tuh ternyata. Jika hanya punya waktu terbatas, misalnya 15 menit saja, bagaimana membuat narasumber comfort, apalagi menghadapi pejabat di pemerintah yang menemunya sulit? Jawabannya sering diplomatis, nggak to the point, ada trik kah Mbak? Oke, ini juga banyak terjadi di studio ya. Di lapangan pun memang seperti itu. Kalau kita doorstop, jawaban para pejabat ini pada umumnya adalah normatif. Ya, kita akan pelajari lagi. Nanti kita akan proses lebih lanjut. Ini masih dalam penyelidikan. Nanti kita akan sampaikan hasil penyelidikannya. Normatif. Dan memang begitulah apa ya karakteristik mereka, karakteristik pejabat, dan mereka memang diminta untuk seperti itu. Mereka akan memberikan jawaban normatif untuk hal-hal yang mungkin kontroversial atau mungkin sesuatu yang tidak bisa mereka jawab. Ya, kita harus memiliki data yang kuat ya, seperti tadi yang saya bilang. Ketika kita punya data yang kuat, kita tinggal minta klarifikasi kepada dia. Bapak, tapi menurut Menteri Keuangan ini thrifting sudah tidak boleh lagi di Indonesia. Lalu seperti apa nanti para pedagang-pedagang thrifting ini? Bagaimana nasib mereka ke depan? Jadi kita punya data yang sifatnya kemudian jadi konfirmasi. Bagaimana membuat narasumber comfort ya? Sebenarnya kalau kita punya waktu terbatas, jenis pertanyaan kita yang kita harus lebih kreatif. Pertanyaannya seperti tadi dari umum dulu. Biasanya pejabat tuh nggak suka nih langsung ditodong ya. Pak, eh, katanya Bapak nggak datang nih di rapat hari ini. Bapak ngapain gitu? Enggak. Tanya dulu, tanya dulu yang mungkin dia masih nyaman untuk menjawabnya. Satu, pertanyaan pertama, pertanyaan kedua, nih masih jawab. Pertanyaan ketiga, boleh nih masuk todong. Pak, tapi Bapak katanya udah 2 kali yang kehadir rapat. Gitu. Bapak izin atau seperti apa, Pak? Nah, mungkin nggak akan langsung marah nih dia karena tadi udah dibuat nyaman dulu dengan pertanyaan-pertanyaan umum. Itu sih.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Andi. Saya ini ada pertanyaan Mbak. Mungkin
Mhm.
secara bagaimana Mbak menjalankan sebagai news anchor. Mungkin kayak ada beberapa kali saya
Ya.
sempat lihat di apa di siaran live juga ketika ada wawancara live eh, ketika narasumbernya itu mulai terdengar defensif, Mbak. Waktu pas dia menyampaikan pendapatnya, terus juga tersinggung.
Mhm.
Langkah apa yang Mbak ambil khususnya sebagai news anchor untuk menurunkan tensi percakapan ya, Mbak?
Baik. Em, Seringkali tentunya ya kita menemukan narasumber yang seperti ini. Pernah sekali saya menginterview kuasa hukum dari Nikita Mirzani nih. Dan kuasa hukum Nikita Mirzani kita tahu ya orangnya kayak gimana, galaknya tuh nggak kalah galak sama kliennya. Pantes kliennya kayak gini ya. Jadi sampai di studio dia udah memasang apa ya, kayak udah defensif duluan nih kalau kita nanyain soal kasusnya. Itu nggak ngikutin persidangan ya kayak gitu. Ini emang nggak ngikutin persidangan nanyanya kayak gitu misalnya ya. Atau dia udah duluan menekan kita, mengintimidasi kita. Nama saya salah ya. Saya nggak mau kalau nama saya salah. Saya nggak mau diwawancara. Jadi kita harus menjaga atau mengontrol suasana, mengontrol emosi, turunkan tensi. Kalau dia tensinya tinggi, kita yang menurunkan tensi suara kita. Jadi kayak apa ya? hmm, Validasi perasaan mereka tanpa menyetujui isinya. Jadi kayak oke, oke Pak, mohon maaf ya kalau salah namanya. Oh oke, kalau persidangan mungkin semuanya nggak kami ikutin, tapi persidangan terakhir kami lihat seperti ini Pak. Jadi kita tetap menjaga tensi kita netral, jangan sampai kita terpancing nih, dia tensinya tinggi, terus kita juga tensinya jadi tinggi juga nggak boleh. Kita harus kontrol, kita harus conscience bahwa kita ini netral, kita ini harus menjaga jalannya wawancara. Dan kita juga bisa menyatakan bahwa saya mengerti Pak, ini agak sensitif ya. Bisa juga dengan itu, lalu arahkan kembali ke pertanyaan yang tadi. Jadi validasi dulu dia gitu bahwa oke Pak, memang ini sensitif, memang ini kontroversial ya Pak, tapi kita ingin tahu sebenarnya tuh yang benar seperti apa kronologinya, misalnya kayak gitu. Dan untuk yang pertanyaan-pertanyaan sensitif, gunakan teknik yang soft ya, seperti yang saya bilang tadi, jangan memaksa. Jika memang dia tetap menolak untuk menjawab, hormati batasannya dan pindah ke pertanyaan selanjutnya yang mungkin dia mau jawab. Itu aja.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Andi. Mungkin ada dua pertanyaan terakhir Mbak untuk
Mhm.
sesi diskusi ini. Tadi mungkin ini juga salah satu yang kita lihat juga ada di Indonesia. Kalau tadi di sesi pertama, salah satu
Mhm.
tantangan yang disebutkan oleh Miss Barkha itu yaitu em, news media itu dimiliki oleh perusahaan pribadi atau private company di India dan juga di Indonesia mungkin kita lihat hampir sama juga seperti itu. Dan jika saya punya pertanyaan di mana di tengah tekanan rating dan tuntutan dari rating suatu perusahaan itu, bagaimana Mbak menjaga agar pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang Mbak ajukan tetap berfokus kepada kepentingan publik, bukan hanya memegang hanya untuk mendapatkan tuntutan rating itu, Mbak.
Baik, terima kasih Mas Dava. Jadi memang itu adalah realita ya di media, bukan hanya di Indonesia, tetapi juga di seluruh dunia, bahwa kita ini mengakui bahwa kita berada di industri media, kepemilikan media itu bermacam-macam, ada yang pengusaha, kemudian ada juga yang politikus. Mohon maaf, di TV juga pemiliknya kita tahu siapa. Tentu punya kepentingan dan sebagai media yang dimiliki atau ownernya seorang politikus dan sekaligus seorang pengusaha, maka ada setiap media punya rambu-rambu tersendiri. Semua media saya yakin punya rambu-rambu terkait pemberitaan yang berkaitan dengan eh, kepemilikan atau owner gitu. Tapi yang paling terpenting adalah bagi kita jurnalis yang bekerja di media tersebut, intinya satu, kita berpihak kepada kebenaran. Kita menjalankan tugas kita sebagai jurnalis selalu berpijak pada kebenaran bahwa kita ini menjalankan tugas kita sudah sesuai dengan kode etik jurnalistik, kita kemudian memberitakan kebenaran dengan jujur, tidak ada manipulasi. Toh, jika owner atau pemilik media itu melarang pemberitaan sesuatu, maka kita tidak akan memberitakan dengan pertimbangan-pertimbangan tersebut. Tetapi ketika ada peristiwa lainnya yang menyangkut kepentingan publik, kita tetap memberitakan dengan cover both side sesuai dengan apa standar etika jurnalistik yang benar. Itu tugas kita sebagai jurnalis. Kita tetap menjalankan secara profesionalitas, tapi setiap perusahaan atau setiap industri memang punya rambu-rambu tertentu. Kalau dia sudah ditayangkan misalnya TV One nih, tidak bisa memberitakan sesuatu pemberitaan karena terkait dengan owner, maka kita cukup senang, cukup ikhlas kalau itu sudah ada media lain yang memberitakannya. Oh ya, contoh kasus juga, mumpung saya ingat, karena dalam beberapa waktu terakhir ini kita menyaksikan bagaimana bencana alam di Sumatera, ini adalah pukulan yang berat bagi Indonesia, banjir bandang, longsor hingga gempa, dan ini juga menjadi ujian nyata bagi kerja jurnalistik ya. Dan saya sebenarnya kecewa dengan netizen yang banyak broadcast atau banyak memviralkan bahwa di mana televisi, di mana media saat bencana ini terjadi, mana mereka kok nggak ada sih bencana di TV. Padahal sejak hari pertama itu jurnalis-jurnalis kita semuanya berusaha untuk ke titik bencana itu dengan kendala putusnya akses dan juga jaringan. Televisi bagaimana bisa siaran kalau nggak ada jaringan ya? Kemudian bagaimana bisa mengirim berita kalau nggak ada jaringan? Tetapi untuk apa berita-berita atau video-video viral itu tidak bisa juga langsung disebarkan oleh kita karena kita ini butuh akurasi dan kita butuh verifikasi terlebih dahulu sehingga kita tidak langsung menayangkan meskipun sudah banyak beredar video-video di sosial media karena kita mau memiliki data yang terverifikasi barulah kita beritakan. Dan jurnalis-jurnalis kita pun banyak yang kemudian eh, membuat vlog, story di apa Instagram atau sosial media mereka pada saat berada di lokasi bencana. Jadi itu tidak benar kalau media atau televisi tidak hadir di bencana Sumatera pada saat terjadinya atau awal-awal kejadian. Bahkan sampai hari ini pun media terus memberitakan bencana itu hingga saya yakin karena pemberitaan yang terus kita gaungkan, pemberitaan yang terus kita berikan, Presiden sampai 3 kali nih mengunjungi Pulau Sumatera. Itu sih tambahannya ya, Mas Dava.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Ani Kumala. Mungkin ini terakhir Mbak yang dari Mbak sebagai news anchor, mungkin ada nggak Mbak untuk pesan ataupun yang dapat diberikan khususnya kepada jurnalis muda yang juga memiliki keinginan juga untuk bisa menjadi news anchor di mana tadi dalam pemaparan yang telah Mbak lakukan, kita tahu bahwa dalam menjadi news anchor itu tidak hanya melakukan wawancara langsung langsung
Mhm.
sampai kantor langsung duduk langsung melakukan ya wawancara, melainkan juga ada pre-interviewnya di mana wawancara kita Mbak sebagai news anchor perlu melakukan riset, juga perlu melakukan pre-interview yang mana di dalamnya juga melakukan apa interaksi yang dapat memberikan rasa nyaman kepada narasumber. Mungkin apakah Mbak ada pesan yang dapat diberikan khususnya kepada jurnalis muda yang hadir pada sesi Voice of Tomorrow ini, Mbak?
Iya, saya melihat bahwa jurnalis-jurnalis muda saat ini sangat kreatif ya dibandingkan dengan kita yang dulu. Saat ini juga mereka punya banyak sekali tools atau media untuk bisa berkarya. Jadi meskipun kita diserang oleh informasi yang sangat masif di sosial media, jangan lupa bahwa cepat itu memang penting, tetapi benar itu adalah wajib. Jadi bagi jurnalis-jurnalis muda tetap jaga bahwa apa yang kita beritakan, apa yang kita informasikan adalah sesuatu yang sudah terverifikasi kebenarannya dan juga jujur. Karena disitulah bedanya kita dengan netizen pada umumnya yang menyebarkan informasi. Kita tidak mungkin akan menyebarkan hoax dan tujuan kita adalah mengedukasi, memberikan informasi, mencerdaskan publik. Maka benar itu adalah wajib. Dan gunakan kreativitas yang sama dengan para influencer, konten kreator untuk membuat konten yang justru bisa lebih baik dengan skill yang kita punya. Kita sudah memiliki skill eh, interview, kita memiliki skill untuk riset, kita memiliki skill untuk konfirmasi, klarifikasi, maka itulah yang kita buat bagaimana bisa sekreatif mungkin agar mendeliver news itu ke publik sekarang bisa lebih diterima dibandingkan hanya berita-berita yang saat ini media konvensional lakukan. Jadi karena banyaknya tools yang saat ini bisa digunakan, sudah ada AI dan sebagainya. AI bagus tapi tetap butuh kebijaksanaan, wisdom dari seorang manusia. Sehingga jurnalis, meskipun ada AI, Anda harus tetap memverifikasi, meramu informasi yang diberikan oleh AI itu agar sesuai dengan fakta dan data di lapangan. Jadi pesan saya adalah jurnalisme hadir untuk membantu publik memahami lebih cerdas. Kita tidak boleh ikut-ikutan dengan yang viralitas karena eh, kita ini harus memiliki kepercayaan, trust dari publik, tapi tidak perlu kita ikut-ikutan hanya untuk viral semata. Itu aja. Jaga sesuatu atau informasi yang benar dan jujur, karena kalau bukan jurnalis yang tetap menjaga independensi dan juga etika profesinya, maka publik kita akan terus dibodoh-bodohi. Dan itu
Baik.
adalah salah satu tugas dari jurnalis.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Andi atas presentasinya dan juga diskusi yang Mbak telah dibuka, dan juga Mbak telah memberikan jawaban-jawaban atas pertanyaan dari para partisipan yang telah hadir di sesi Voice of Tomorrow ini. Eh, Baik, terima kasih Mbak Andi. Mungkin Pak Sachin, apabila Bapak memiliki remarks.
Thank you, terima kasih Bu Andi, Kumala, sangat luar biasa sesi Anda. Saya lihatnya, saya dengar juga semuanya. Saya lihatnya itu pengalaman Anda yang ada di TV One sangat bermanfaat buat semua peserta yang ikut hadir hari ini untuk program. Dan saya mudah-mudahan kami juga nanti sampaikan ini ke semua anak muda yang ikut journalism melalui program yang kita launching di bulan Februari. Bagaimana program Voice of Tomorrow bisa masuk ke semua universitas dan juga sekolah-sekolah yang ada journalism course atau ada jurusan khusus untuk itu. Dan itu aja dari saya, and I think Dava balik ke Anda.
Ya, terima kasih juga Pak Sachin, kemudian Mr. Sandep. Saya sangat terhormat bisa hadir di forum diskusi ini, dan ini adalah acara yang keren banget menurut saya yang dilakukan oleh India Ambassador ya, Bapak Kedutaan India. Terima kasih.
Yes. Thank
Baik,
you.
terima kasih Mbak Andi, terima kasih Bapak Sachin, terima kasih para partisipan yang telah hadir, dan juga selamat berakhir pekan. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.